chicken yassa has been my totemic dish. It's my good luck dish, in a way. Lemons are non-threatening, ditto chicken, ditto onions, and I think for that reason it is a dish that hops or leaps over the taste barricades that people might otherwise have. It also surprises people. Oh, this can't be African. This can't be from West Africa, because it's not what people expect. It's not what people think. My name is Jessica Harris. I use my middle initial B as in boy, so I'm Jessica B. Harris, and I'm a food historian. I have, for the past 30 plus years, lived here in what I like to refer to as the People's Independent Republic of Brooklyn. My parents met and married in Brooklyn. I started writing about food in the late 1970s as the travel editor for Essence magazine. Why did I gravitate towards studying cuisines of the African diaspora? Well, I think if you look at me, some of that is probably obvious. It is the world in which I grew up. It's the food I grew up eating. But it's also the world in which I have done much of my traveling, and it is the world of my academic study. I always paraphrase Zora Neale Hurston, who used to say that she looked at the world through the spyglass of anthropology. A food historian looks at, arguably, history, certainly the world, through the spyglass of food. When I started writing about food, it was a very different landscape. First of all, food to pretty much everyone meant French, or at the very least European. Italy kind of came in along with the Mediterranean diet, and then Spain followed Italy, and it was Barbara Trapp, Julia Child, Paula Wolfert, Nancy Harmon Jenkins, a variety of women who each established sort of culinary bailiwicks, if you will, and who talked about food within those contexts. Then gradually it expanded, and people like Barbara Trapp brought in China, and then you got Chinese food, and then that brought other Asian foods, Japanese food, and so on and so forth. And then we see South America coming in, but we've never really seen the African Atlantic world on plates, on tables, in any of this. So I've been, fighting the good fight. My first food TV appearance was 36 years ago. And that was just wacko.
Our second author in our Hot and Spicy Foods is Jessica Harris. She's just come out with her first book. It's entitled Hot Stuff, right?
What
dish is this you brought
This
for?
is chicken yassa, poulet yassa from Senegal in West Africa.
Chicken yassa?
Yassa, yes.
I cooked it myself. I cooked it at home. There was no food stylist involved. It was my very first television appearance for my very first cookbook.
Should I have a plate or use my fingers?
Oh, well, you can do it either way.
Mother said if it has a bone in it, it's finger food.
It's finger food.
Well, I think a lot of things have changed in food media just in the past year, 2 years, certainly following the Black Lives Matter and George Floyd and everything that has kind of exploded into the front of the mind consciousness, if you will, of the general public. You begin to see a growth of awareness of the importance of the African American chef, of the importance of the African American hand in the cooking pots of this country, and in fact, of this hemisphere. And just because I like to be contentious, and arguably the world. Yassa appears in many, I don't know how many, but many of my cookbooks. It's because it's my good luck recipe. Certainly I'd had stewed chicken, I'd had grilled chicken, I'd had onions that had been sauteed, I'd had lemon juice or lime juice, but I never had them all together. So I think it was the conjoining of them in some factor Yassa is from the southern part of Senegal. Senegal is a country where the main grain, traditionally, certainly in the south, is rice. And yassa is a dish that is served with rice. I describe it as a connector because the familiar and the unfamiliar. The dish that speaks to that kind of invisible, but sometimes intuited umbilicus, if you will, between the African continent and the American hemisphere. So it's a dish I first tasted when I was in Senegal in 1972, which was my first trip I was going. A girlfriend was supposed to go with me. She canceled at the last moment, and my mother joined me on the trip. Now, my mother was sort of my culinary secret weapon. She had amazing taste buds. She was actually trained as a dietitian and could taste a dish and pretty much replicate it, or at least say, I think that might be coriander. And no, I've got a little cumin coming through. I had met in the course of my interviews for my doctorate a gentleman who I now recognize was probably a griot. He was one of the praise singers who worked at, I think, the Théâtre National Daniel Sorano, which was the National Theatre of Senegal. And we kind of hit it off, and he said, you must come home to lunch. Mom and I went the next day to his place for lunch. It was an amazing experience because he was not someone of wealth. So that was my first meeting of yassa, meeting with yassa, I guess. And it was love at first bite. I am rolling the lemons a little bit because that lets the juice come out of the lemon a bit. My personal taste is more to the tart, the bitey, the bright, the acidulated, the lemony, limey, citrusy things. Oh, strong onions. A general compass, there is, in my experience of the continent, taste for the bitey, the heat, whether it comes from the chili itself or from a pepper sauce of some sort. And so that use of the habanero is important. It's what gives my yassa its bite and much of its flavor. One of the interesting things about many of the foods of the African continent is they may be labor intensive. Yassa is something where flavor is, sort of once, twice, three times the flavor. This, as I said, involves three different preparations. You marinate, you grill, you stew. It takes time. And so it's a dish that becomes a special occasion dish when you take the time, when you make the time to do that. So you get a little bit of the smokiness from the grill, and in Senegal it would be grilled outside. So you're getting the charcoaly flavor from the grill. So with yassa, what is involved often is the addition of possibly olives, carrots. There is minced habanero, but there's also a pricked habanero. So I'm pricking it because that way, as it's in the stew, it won't explode, because if it explodes, then you don't know how hot it's going to be. Pimento stuffed olives, obviously something that is not traditional. So this is kind of a fancied up yassa in a way. In Senegal, there is often a preference for what is called riz cassé, or broken rice. Now, it may be a preference for making the best of a bad lot. Rice was certainly an export good, and the whole grain rice, the full rice, kernel if you will, or grain, would have been worth more. But there is also the thought that the broken rice, because it is broken, will absorb the sauce better. And so it's a very, very different dish, but yet a dish that combines flavors that are familiar. I'm not really sure why yassa has had such an impact on me. I think it's because not so much that it was the first dish I tasted in Senegal, but it was the dish that unlocked the thought process that then allowed me to make connections.
This is sneaky good. This sneaks up on you.
Yeah, it sneaks up on you, and if you're really into it, you can cut that little piece of pepper up and make it even
smoke
hotter.
for at least a half an hour after.
Well, you smoke, but from your ears. That's the way you do it.
That's terrific.
You like that?
And I think that the unlocking the thought process was as important as the taste of the dish itself, because all of my cookbooks that deal with the African Atlantic world are a result of that thought process that was unlocked by the yassa.
Juneteenth is going to be celebrated as a federal holiday, and you're about to meet a chef who is marking it in a very special way.
NBC's Morgan Radford is here with us. Good to have you live in 1A, Morgan. Good to see you.
So excited to be back and to see you all. So Juneteenth has always honored freedom, unity, and history. And part of that is celebrated through tradition, storytelling, and food. That's why one chef from Wisconsin decided that this Juneteenth, she was going to do something special and fulfill a promise made more than a century ago.
A big idea finally come to life.
How does this feel? I mean, just a year ago, this was all just a dream.
Yeah, it's very surreal that, this is mine.
This is your corn.
Yeah.
Here on 39 acres of land in St. Helena, South Carolina, Chef Adrian Lipscomb is creating a sanctuary for Black farmers.
The Welcoming Center is over there. Right.
Where they can grow their own produce and learn about the history of an industry that currently is less than 2% Black.
We were cooking as slaves, as the cooks in these kitchens. We want to recreate those kitchens. We want to celebrate, but also explain to others and to the public. We want the community to come to this land. We want them to be able to come celebrate on this land.
Opening up a new world of possibility that all started with a mystery check in the mail for $100.
So you did not know personally the person who put this check in the mail to you?
No. Didn't know this person.
Her project is called 40 Acres and a Mule, a reference to the short-lived attempt at reparations that gave former slaves land after the Civil War, only to be rescinded after Lincoln's assassination.
It started with the Special Field Order number 15 by General Sherman to give 40 acres and a mule to the slaves that were released from the Civil War that were following him. And the question he asked is, what do you want? And one of them stood up and said, land.
How does Juneteenth and the significance of Juneteenth for you connect to this project?
Juneteenth has always been celebrated with me and my family. 1865 is just a significant year. You already have freed slaves in January of 1865, but you still don't have the free slaves of Texas, not until June 18th of 1865. By the next day, they're celebrating, and they're saying, we are free, we can celebrate. And what is so interesting is that slaves weren't allowed to be in big groups. So a lot of those leaders came together and they bought land where they would go and celebrate Juneteenth. And food was a huge portion of this.
The celebration of freedom.
The celebration of freedom, you're right.
Which is why Lipscomb, a mother of 4 who owns Uptown Cafe and Bakery in La Crosse, Wisconsin, decided to start her project here in South Carolina.
A lot of history right there.
A land
slaves were here.
Slaves were here.
With deep roots and African ancestry.
Land is huge. Land brings identity, land brings community, land brings freedom. It allows us to navigate in this world, to create our history, to respect our history, but also bring forth our future.
Lipscomb was able to raise more than $150,000 in less than a year through a GoFundMe page and with the support of celebrity chefs like Mashama Bailey and David Thomas.
As an African-American chef, I am really interested in reclaiming the narrative where the food of this country started.
Together, they're fixing up something special ahead of this Juneteenth, celebrating on their land in the best way they know how.
Some of the best chefs in America around the table.
Helping one entrepreneur fulfill a promise from generations ago.
Left the hands that made this food.
For generations to come.
Amen. I see.
And this is just the beginning. Adrian hopes that by next year, the land will actually host an archive of Black farming traditions, 3 kitchens that represent the African ancestral contributions to cooking, and produce farms for Black farmers. So her hope is really to create a safe space for them to grow, to cook, and sustain their own produce, while also learning about its history and where those food and food ways come from.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic story, Morgan. Again, they've been celebrating Juneteenth, it sounds like, for a few generations.
Definitely, especially there in Texas, where, Texas and throughout the South, and now we're seeing it have more national recognition.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Good story. Thank you very much, Morgan. Appreciate it.
It's the first of its kind, For the Culture, a new magazine celebrating Black women in food and wine, and written, photographed, and illustrated all by Black women. It's the brainchild of Clancy Miller, a pastry chef turned food writer.
I worked in Paris at a bakery and a restaurant, and I loved it, but I also realized that I wanted to work outside of the restaurant. So from working in kitchens to writing about food.
When it comes to food and wine and beautiful cookbooks, there's certainly no shortage. So what made you decide that it's time for something a little bit different?
I've never seen a lot of focus on Black people in general, but specifically Black women. And I truly believe that Black women are the architects of kitchens and cuisines in this country throughout history and in many countries throughout the world. So I wanted to create a publication that would center our experiences, our expertise, and our voices in relationship to food and wine.
Inspired by a famous writer, she went to work.
There's a quote that Toni Morrison has said, which is, if there is a book that you want to read, write it.
Ooh.
And so this is a magazine, but I felt like this is something I want to read.
And that was just the beginning. Clancy launched a crowdfunding campaign a little over a year ago and sought submissions. That was enough to begin putting pen to paper. 35 women contributed to the first issue. Gracing the cover, culinary historian, cookbook author, and college professor Jessica B. Harris.
I want people to feel inspired to learn something more about a person they didn't know about before. If you have never made a Somalian meal, I hope you'll try one of the recipes. So I want people to feel like their curiosity is being sated.
In celebration of the magazine's release, we toasted 3 women profiled in the issue. Angela Davis, also known as the Kitchenista, is a home cook and an 8-year food blogger of the Kitchenista Diaries. Mashama Bailey is an award-winning executive chef and partner of The Gray Restaurant and The Gray Market in Savannah, Georgia. And Krista Scruggs is a Vermont farmer, winemaker, and business owner of Zaffa Wines, who provided a little tasting of it for us.
Krista, what do you think about this magazine?
Because finally having space and holding space when everyone else has but us, or that we've got to fight harder to have our voices heard.
Mashama, bring us behind the scenes to be a woman of color in the food and wine space.
I do think that it's lonely. I don't think that there are many of us. And it's really been an eye-opening journey to meet people.
Angela, what would you want people to know?
My daughter's 6, and to flip through this magazine, and it was just picture after picture of Black and brown women and food, and it's all about us.
I'm looking at our boxes. We're all in different places right now. One thing is for sure, food and wine and culture, it connects us, doesn't it?
Yeah. We're here celebrating our stories, celebrating each other.
Congratulations, and here's to many more.
Sometimes inspiration can come from the most unexpected places.
Yeah, like the teenager who decided to turn her fear of bees into a belief in the impossible.
Yeah, and Donna's here to tell us all about it. Hey, Donna.
Hi, ladies. That's right. 16-year-old Michaela Ulmer started her company, Me and the Bees Lemonade, over 10 years ago. Her passion for success will motivate aspiring entrepreneurs of all ages.
Most 4.5-year-olds aren't looking for products to sell, but a business fair for kids sparked little Michaela Ulmer's entrepreneurial spirit, and her beverage company's story began. It was all thanks to a cookbook from her great-granny Helen containing a recipe for flaxseed lemonade. That, combined with getting 2 painful bee stings one day, made up the ingredients to Michaela's soon-to-be booming business.
After getting stung by those bees, I was terrified of them, and my parents said, okay, we're a pretty outdoorsy family, how about you learn about them? And so I learned bees are important pollinators, bees are also dying at an alarming rate, and how you can help save them. And I realized, hey, I can start a lemonade stand to help save them, and use my great-granny Helen's flaxseed idea, and sweeten with honey, and maybe donate a portion to organizations that were helping save the bees.
And with her family's assistance, that stand evolved into a thriving company.
As we grew, it just became a whole family support.
With time, support, and ambition, Me and the Bees Lemonade was launched, a product that not only strives to taste good, but also do good.
I wanted something that other kids could drink as well, because my parents didn't want me drinking high fructose corn syrup or chemicals or artificial flavors, and I wanted to make a measurable impact on saving the bees.
Your book is incredibly enlightening for those who want to start a business of their own. What are some principles in business that you stick by?
Give, save, and spend. And that's something that my dad has taught me and his grandfather has taught him. But give to something that you're interested in and passionate about. Save for something that you want in the future that you may not be able to get right now. And then spend, because like you worked this many hours, so definitely let your hard work pay off. Know your numbers. Like I had to know my numbers when I pitched on Shark Tank, even though I was 10 years old.
Her pitch on Shark Tank raised her brand's profile and landed them a deal with an investor, one of the many milestones in Michaela's business journey.
You met the Obamas more than once. You received multiple awards. You created your own nonprofit. Your lemonade is in over 1,500 stores across America, and you hired your own team. What has been your favorite moment so far?
My favorite thing about being an entrepreneur is being able to travel and also meet other people. One of my favorite experiences was being able to travel to South Africa. I met people my age who were interested in the same thing as me. And I also got to teach South African girls about making a budget and like what a balance statement is for their businesses. And they actually started their own company.
Michaela's focus on social entrepreneurship led her to create her nonprofit, the Healthy Hive Foundation, which expands Michaela's mission to save the bees and inspire.
How important is it to you to use your voice and be the change?
I think it's so important, especially because of diversity. We had gotten messages on, hey, we'll carry a product if you move your face to the back. And then at the same time, I was getting messages from girls or even people who were saying, I bought this just because I saw your face, or you like inspired me to start my own company at a stand as well. And so it was kind of comparing the lesson of you can't please everyone, and who do I want my brand to speak to. And that's when I realized like I can be a role model.
I'd like to cheers to you.
Yes, thank you.